Hi, and welcome to Exterior Acid Staining, What's Going to Happen and How It'll Be Alright. We're going to start off with a little story, a case study for a guy named Reese. He's retired and he collects cars, and he sat in this chair and watched us through most of the process that we're going to show pictures of. His wife Betsy would rather not be pictured, but Rayford could not care less about being pictured. Here's what his back patio looked like when it started. They had carpeted the back porch maybe 3 times before learning about Element 7 concrete, and they decided to do something more permanent and special back there. So we found a pattern that we were going to score in there. It was going to look like this with the little squares at 45 of the bigger squares. And they looked at a color chart and they selected Malay tan. We were going to stain the small squares black, but we expected that to wash out and be subtle and be largely Malay tan. So on the first day, we tore out the carpeting, we ground the concrete, and we scored, that's a shallow saw cut, that pattern into the slab and applied the stain. This is what it looked like with just the glue. After it was stained, it was this color. The stain is actually a lime green color in the bottle, and it reacts with chemicals in the concrete to create the color. On the second day, we rinsed the residue from that reaction, and the color is close, but it looks light and orange and spotty when it dries out, and it has to dry out real good before we seal it. Now you'll recall that the color they selected was this Malay tan. They call it buckskin suede tone with amber undertones on the color chart. It didn't look like that in the original, and you can see when it's halfway sealed, you have the light peaked color, and then you have the rich color getting popped by the sealer. And then when it's sealed, you're right there at that Malay tan. The reason for that is the concrete is physically porous before you seal it, and so the color deep in the pores isn't reflected. When the acrylic fills in the pores, then you have the color and you're able to see it. Now, not all projects look perfect after staining. On interior floors, we use a 2-step process where we'll use special dyes to pivot the color in the direction that we want. Outside though, acid stain is really the best way to go. All of those dyes will change color and fade in the sun over time. So again, here's the color chart for acid staining. They're very natural, but there are no beige or gray or taupe colors. And so our process inside starts with this, and we only proceed with any project as long as all of us are clear on what's possible and what the limitations are. Now, kind of going back to what you need to know as an end user, the reason why we acid stain concrete is that it matches nearly everything. It hasn't gone out of style in 80 years. It's clean, it doesn't fade. We just think it's the most responsible thing to do with existing concrete. You gotta know going in though, it's not for everybody because it is going to be imperfect, it's unpredictable, it will change, and that color palette is kind of limited. There is no beige or almond or tan. We're using rock salts really. So again, it matches everything. You're not gonna go wrong really, and it's not going to go out of style. The first projects from the 1920s still look great. On the other hand, the best tile from 30 years ago looks like the mid-80s now. I think good design in general, those things should be relevant indefinitely. It's the cleanest thing that you can do. When you acid wash concrete, you kill all the stuff in there. When you seal it, you keep stuff from getting back in there, and it doesn't fade in the sun. The sealer will wear out, and that will make the concrete look lighter, but when you reseal it, you're back in there. So again, we think it's a responsible thing to do. Can't hammer this home enough. It is imperfect. The perfect slab of concrete is a unicorn. I'm not even expecting to see it anymore. And you have to know that it's unpredictable. We can pick out samples, but we can't guarantee that your slab is going to look exactly like the sample because we're not covering it with paint. We've got a lot of tricks, but we're occasionally surprised even after thousands of floors. It's important to know also that your floor will change over time. You might get little white spots or dark spots or brown spots. You might not get any spots. I don't know, but the bottom line is you got to know going into it is a living finish, and if you know that, you can appreciate it, and frankly, it gets better looking most of the time. Again, that palette is limited. There is no beige, there is no gray, and outside, there's not a good way to do gray unless you're adding color to fresh concrete. I'm going to give you kind of a rare look behind the curtain of the acid stain to really drive that home. So all the acid stains boil down to basically 4 chemicals. There's a ferric chloride, which is a rust stain. There's cupric chloride, which is a copper stain. That's where the blues and greens come from that we use to balance that rust color. There's sodium dichromate, which gives us black, and the manganese chloride will give us some of the chocolate browns. So higher concentrations of acid may make the concrete lighter and more yellow, and by mixing these together, that's how they develop these 8 and 9 color charts. All stain manufacturers basically have the same elements, and the makers blend these together, and installers mix them further in the field. But at the end of the day, there's only 5 elements. So we've got some knowledge, but there's just a lot of things with acid stain that cannot be done. If you look at the chemical color chart, it might be helpful for you to know that diluted Malay tan is pretty much golden wheat. And English red plus green lawn will give you vintage umber. English red plus golden wheat will give you cola. And our standard operating procedure is to add some aqua blue to nearly all golden wheat and Malay tan, just to make them less orange and to make them more like the color chart. We alluded to this earlier that on interior floors we can use dyes to adjust color. Exterior, we don't do that as much because it's just not as permanent. It's not a terrible thing to do because you'll get where you want to go faster, but it's better inside than out. So again, to get tan, we're balancing amber and blue. This is Malay tan with no blue, and you'll see that there's a lot of orange to it. To get the tan, this one will use a lot of blue. This was one, a buddy of mine actually, he tried to stain it himself. This was glowing longhorn orange, and we used straight aqua blue to bring it back the other way. If you look at the rocks on his garage, you'll notice that a lot of tan rocks actually have quite a bit of blue in them, and so that's part of where that comes from. This particular example is a 5-to-1 Malay tan, so we watered the Malay tan down quite a bit and used 15% blue. This one is 5-to-1 golden wheat with 10% blue. And you can see that like the lighter washes of those colors with a lot of blue tends to get about what we want. And we like to be really transparent with our tricks because frankly, what makes Element 7 concrete is execution. We can give away trade secrets all day long, but unless you've really been trained by our system and have evaluators coming behind you and have all the little tricks, it's not going to be the same. So we don't care about giving this to our competitors. But you as our client, we want you to know what we're doing. And if you want to get involved and say, hey, could we do X, then we can tell you whether or not that makes sense and what that might look like in other instances. So again, that's 5-to-1 golden wheat, 10% blue. This one is 5-to-1 Malay tan with 15% blue, pretty similar. This is 5-to-1 Malay tan with 15% blue on a rock salt finish. This is a hotel in Austin. And then the only other way to get tans, and it's a little sketchy, is to use walnut. So this 3-to-1 walnut looks great, but you got to know going into it that it can go a lot darker than this. And walnut, by definition, is a darker color, and all acid staining is going to do whatever it's going to do. So this is a 3-to-1 walnut. This looks great, but it ended up darker than intended. And the cool thing about walnut, though, is it's not really like this balancing act. It's darker, but it's not going to go yellow or green or orange as much as anything else. So that's all I got for now. I hope that helps you understand why we are doing this and what the limitations are. But right now, frankly, I gotta get back to work and make some pretty stuff. Appreciate you watching. Take care.